Professor Watanabe, what do you make of the latest reshuffle? Which direction do you think the name list is leading us to in terms of Japan's politics and even geopolitics? Briefly, Professor.
Yes, as you have pointed out, the Ms. as the new defense minister, she is very conservative. She doesn't believe in the Nanjing massacre and also comfort women questions like that, and very nationalistic. So Mr. Abe wants to have her to support strongly his ideas against China and also North Korea. This is the first point. Second point is that it is hidden behind. The term of the presidency of the LDP for Prime Minister Abe is just 2 years left, because the term for 3 years, and this is the second term. So he wants to change the clothes of the party itself, together with the supporters of the cabinet. So this is the hidden dimension. And third one is that the very nationalistic policies against including China and North Korea, together with the United States, to be defended by the military industries of Japan. Those are three things that Mr. Abe reshuffled. But one more thing is the Komeito party, they are now, you see, very clear not to be involved too much for the pacifist clause of the Constitution. So Mr. Abe wants to do everything without the coalition party actually in 2 years of time. These are three or four things that I believe in the reshuffle.
Well, Professor Watanabe has already analyzed very clearly from the personnel change to the party's direction and now to the administration's direction in terms of policy implementation, and also to the whole military industry in Japan and how it's working with the government policies and stuff. So what about you, from your perspective, Mr. Gao? China, when looking at what is going on now in Japan, particularly today, when the extreme, in a way, ally of Mr. Abe being sworn in as a key member of the cabinet, what do you think is the direction that we're looking at?
Well, at present, Japan is at an important crossroad, mainly because the Liberal Democratic Party right now is in a majority situation, both in the lower house as well as in the upper house. And Abe actually still enjoys quite a high level of popularity. And at this particular moment, when Prime Minister Abe reshuffled the cabinet, while most of the members actually remain unchanged, this new defense minister is a very important appointment. And I think this new appointment is raising the eyebrows, not only in China, but also in South Korea and several other countries, mainly because of this person's strong commitment to defending the wartime legacy of Japan by frequently visiting the Yasukuni Shrine and being blatant in sticking to the view that Japan did not need to apologize for the wartime atrocities. And I think this is very much unacceptable to countries like China.
But Mr. Gao, may I just suggest to you to look back over the past few years. China, South Korea, even DPRK, and some of Japan's neighbor countries in Southeast Asia have been protesting against an extreme trend as they see it in the Japanese politics, which is to be much less pacifist than it used to be. And yet what happened? Nothing have happened, only going in the further direction of what Prime Minister Abe seems to subscribe to. So when you are saying here, once again, Mr. Gao, from China, we protest this, we don't agree with this, we are against this, what can you do? Would this further push Tokyo in the same direction?
I think things keep adding up. You are right that Japan is moving in the direction of leaving more and more away from the pacifist constitution. Japan now has already authorized itself to be able to send its military to fight in overseas countries. That's a very, very important
in defense
step.
of allies.
Yeah, in defense of allies. And if the Liberal Democratic Party under Prime Minister Abe could manage to amend the constitution for Article 9, for example, this will really turn the tide in Japan. And I hope the Japanese people, out of consideration for their own peace and stability, would not tolerate such an event, and in the referendum which need to happen after the adoption of this decision by the parliament, they will overturn this parliamentarian
Well, when we talk
decision.
about the Japanese people, let's take a look at some polls. Of course, you would never say the polls are 100% correct, but at times polls could reflect a certain kind of mentalities and also attitudes coming from the public. Constitutional revisions must be approved through a referendum according to the Japan Constitution. Some polls in Japan recently have suggested Japanese public were particularly hesitant about the revisions, at least to a certain extent. For example, a Asahi poll on July the 14th, that of course is more than half a month ago, reported that only 35% favored a constitutional revision under Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's leadership. Likewise, a Nikkei poll on July the 25th, it's about a week earlier, found 38% were willing to embrace constitutional revision under the Abe cabinet. Having said that, though, we need to take a look at the two polls where it came from. Of course, it came from more liberal news media and news organizations rather than conservative, rather than nationalistic ones. So, but having said that, though, Professor Watanabe, what do you think? Will the public sentiment also carry the Abe administration even further down the road of possible constitutional revision?
Yes, when it comes to the constitution division, there are two sides if we consider the contents of that. The first side is the peaceful clause of Article 9, and the other side is that something which we want to add to the conclusion, that is the nature preservation or environmental protection clause, which is lacking in the present Constitution.
Okay,
and
let's talk about, Professor, let's talk about Article 9, because it is the Article 9 that have drawn all the concerns of the neighbors. The environmental issue is pretty much what Japan wants to do for its own future, but the Article 9 is concerning about whether it wants to remain a pacifist country. So, Professor, once again from there.
Okay. Constitution 9, especially the people who are very senior in their 50s, 60s, 70s are really against it because they experienced the miserable parts, or they were educated about those miserable parts of the war. And in the last upper house election also, the more than half or half, they are against the division of the Constitution by the hands of the LDP, and also, as you have pointed out, the poll in general, they are against it. So they are, Prime Minister Abe is trying to make some shadows or closing the eyes policy for those people. And he is giving to even the cash payment of 30,000 yen to the senior generation.
Yes.
This is very cunning because he wants to cover the eyes of the people for the benefit of personal benefit.
Having said that, Mr. Gao, Prime Minister, of course, is very calculated in how to fulfill his agenda. You also see the cabinet reshuffle, the real implementation coming from those people that seem to be his allies. You also got a country that seems to be temporarily satisfied with the kind of welfare he provided for the senior generation, which is concerned about Japan leaving its previous status as being a pacifist country. So, what's next? It seems that we are getting ever closer to the constitutional revision in Japan.
Allow me to make one point.
Please go ahead,
in a very
sir.
emphatic way. While the Japanese government under Prime Minister Abe is doing whatever it can to achieve the goal of amending the constitution, subject to the referendum, of course, especially regarding Article 9. What I want to emphasize is that the pacifist constitution actually can date its roots not only to the constitution itself, but it is very much based on the terms of the instrument of the unconditional surrender of Japan at the end of the Second World War, because Japan renounced the use of war as an instrument forever. Therefore, I think my view is that it's not just up to the Japanese government or the referendum by the people in Japan to amend the constitution as far as the pacifist nature of the constitution is concerned. If Japan wants to depart from this legacy of pacifism, that is renouncing the use of war in its international relations, this will trigger a new round of scrutiny by the victor nations of the Second World War, including Russia, the former Soviet Union's successor, and China and the United States and the United Kingdom. So I think Japan needs to move forward very carefully, not to really put itself into a dilemma of trying to do something which eventually will be cornered by the victor nations of the Second World War.
Well, when you are saying there might be an alliance who is against what Japan is trying to do, may I remind you it may not happen, Mr. Gao, because it seems that the Japanese Prime Minister has already worked on that. Earlier, we have been hearing from Japan, there's a white paper being published over there, identify China as the threat. And also Japan has been very active in debates with China concerning the South China Sea, in which there is no territorial disputes between China and Japan. And also Japan has been very active in working together even strongly on the ally relations with Australia, with the United States concerning this issue and many other issues in the Asia-Pacific region. So it seems that, Mr. Gao, Japan is shaping China from its own way into a threat for everybody, and therefore making it legitimate to revise its constitution and also to increase its also military presence.
Well, philosophically speaking, Japan under Prime Minister Abe may be smart on the penny, but losing out on the pound. What I mean is that if you look at Japan, it only has 4 major neighboring countries: Russia, North Korea, South Korea, and China. Of course, China's Taiwan is also very close to Japan, but Japan does not have good relations with Russia, with South Korea, with North Korea, and with China. And that means that Japan is losing out as far as its immediate neighboring countries' relations are concerned. At this particular point, Japan is not trying to build up rapprochement with its major neighboring countries, but try to alienate itself further and further from its neighboring countries and try to give up the good legacy of pacifism in the constitution.
Right.
And that's why I emphasize that Japan may actually be losing out on the pound while trying its best to be smart on the penny.
Professor Watanabe, what do you make of Mr. Gao's comment? Do you think Prime Minister Abe have thought through every step of the way of his plan? Eventually, his plan, what would that mean for your country, particularly for the future?
Prime Minister Abe, he is legally speaking the Prime Minister, but he is not well informed by himself because he wants to have only the dream to follow up his grandfather, and he wants to be the Prime Minister written in the history of Japanese politics. But actually, he is not well informed about what is happening surrounding Japan. Once you see there is some serious matters, even the United States will leave Japan as it is, not surrounded by friendly, nations, South Korea, China, Taiwan and Hong Kong, all those districts. So I sympathize in a sense with Prime Minister Abe in that sense. He should know the reality of the world.
All right.
This is my sincere attitude toward our politics.